Hi, this is Nadine with Happy Eating Healthy. Today I'm going to show you how to make homemade spaghetti sauce. It's really not that hard. Takes a while, but you do it in the crock pot. But putting it together is not that hard. It's pretty easy and it's a lot healthier and it's really good. First thing we need to do is we need to get the onions and garlic ready so that we can cook them with the meat while it's browning. That's the only part you need to do on the stove. Everything else is done in the crock pot. So let's get started showing you how to get the onions and the garlic ready. So I have part of an onion here. The recipe calls for 1 cup of onion, and that's probably going to be most of this, but it may not be all of it. So I'm just going to cut it right like that and start by cutting this amount. Now the first thing I want to do is take that outer skin out. From there, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slice this down like this. Now onions have a tendency to make people cry, so I may start crying while I'm doing this. But having fresh onions is so good, you still want to use them. After I've done that, I come back the other way and I cut them. And this is just getting the basic cut. I really want to get these actually really fine. I like them chopped fairly small. Alright, now that I have the initial cut, I'm just going to go like this and do my hands on the bottom of the blade there, and I'm doing an up and down motion with the back of the blade. And I'm just going across the onions. Now I may have started out with more than I should have here, because this is an awfully big pile. Usually I don't do this much at a time. Now I'm just going back the other way. And as you can see, in hardly no time at all, you're getting your onions chopped up. Now you notice I did not get that whole thing because my knife is not that big, so now I just come and do this part. Now you've got to decide, once you get them chopped up, whether or not they're chopped up fine enough or whether or not you need to chop more. You're just going to keep chopping, going back and forth like I'm doing, until they're small enough the size you want them. If you want big chunks of onion in your stuff, then you don't need to chop it as fine. If you want it really fine, then you're going to do more chopping. I probably like it more on the smaller side, so I'm doing probably more chopping than most people would need to. But it really is up to you. Alright. Now that I've got my onions chopped, I'm going to measure and make sure I have at least a cup. If I have way over a cup, I can save some of these onions that are chopped for another day, and then I won't have to chop as many. Just need to put them in an airtight container. But let's see where we're at. Just going to put some onions in my cup. As you notice, as I'm putting these onions there, I have a little bit more than a cup, but not a lot more, so I'm just going to go ahead and stick all of those onions in here to cook. With that done, I'm now ready to do my garlic. With my garlic, it says to do 2 cloves of garlic. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to push that down like that. And once I've done that, it's a lot easier to peel this outer skin off that we don't want. The other thing I like to do is I don't really like this end piece right there, so I cut that off. Now, this one's not that big, so it's probably going to be fine like this. This one I'm actually going to cut in half. Now what I'm going to do is that same thing I did with the onion, going back and forth and chopping this smaller. With that done, I'm now ready to put this in a little container or a little bowl and take it over to where I'm going to cook the meat. We're ready now to brown the meat and cook the onions and the garlic. In this pan, I have my ground beef. I just use a pound of ground beef. I want to chop up the ground beef. Get it pretty much chopped up before I add the onion and the garlic. Once I have the ground beef pretty much chopped up, then I'm going to add the onions and the garlic. And we are just going to cook this until the ground beef is browned and the onion and garlics are softened. And mainly we're just checking for the ground beef being brown, because this is going to cook for a long time. So if the rest is not totally cooked through, it will get cooked through when it's in the crock pot. This usually takes 5, maybe 10 minutes. Not even that long, about 5 minutes just to brown it. And after we brown it, we're going to want to drain the fat off. Now there may not be a whole lot of fat, because I do get extra lean, 93% lean ground beef. And you can hear that sizzling. And I do like to keep it moving, because I don't want too big of clumps in my ground beef. And as it's cooking, I'm able to help break up the ground beef a little bit more. You can see it's starting to brown. That's what we're looking for. I said we just want to cook it till the meat is basically browned through. So right now I'm just looking at what meat has not browned, and I'm trying to get that down at the bottom so it can quickly brown, so we can take it right off the heat. Because that's all we're looking for, is a browning. So you can see there is some fat and oil that's bubbling. All I do to remove the fat is I tilt the pan like this so that all the fat oozes to one side. And I just take a spoon and spoon it out. You may lose a little bit of the stuff, but you're not going to lose that much. And you notice how it all just pulls down there, and you're able to get it out. And you don't have to get every last little bit out. You just want to get most of it out. All right. That's ready now to go into the crock pot. I'm now getting the oregano and thyme and the herbs ready to be put in the spaghetti sauce. I like to use fresh herbs when I can. So let me show you how I do that. I've already separated some oregano right here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take a swig of oregano and I'm just going to take it off the stem. Now that one wasn't a very good one. Let me show you this one where there's a lot on there. You just pull down like this, and then at the top you can pick it off. And I'm going to need 4½ tablespoons of oregano. So I actually need quite a bit of oregano. Now if you're using the dried oregano and dried herbs, you can kind of half the amount you're going to use. But if you're using the fresh ones, you want to use this amount. Let me chop this up first. And I know that's not going to be enough. But again, with the oregano, I just want to chop the leaves up a little bit finer. And I'm doing that same motion with my hand on top of the knife and cutting it. Just quick cuts like this go in both directions. And then I want 4½ tablespoons. So I just get my tablespoon and I measure. There's one. There's two, so I'm almost halfway there. So I'm just going to get what looks like about the same amount there again and chop it again, maybe a little bit more because I wasn't quite there. Okay, let's just chop this part up real quick. See how close that gets us to the 4½. Remember, we already have 2. And again, you decide how fine you want this chopped up. I'm going to do the same thing with the thyme and the basil. So we'll be back to show you how to put it all together once I have all of my stuff chopped and ready to go. So we're ready to go over now, get out the crock pot, and add everything to it. And it's as simple as that. So let's show you how to do it. So I'm just going to dump all of that meat into the crock pot. To that meat, I'm going to add a can of the diced tomatoes. I'm going to add my can of tomato paste. And my water. Now I want to make sure I can get more of that tomato paste out, so I actually am adding the water to the can of tomato paste to hopefully get more of that tomato paste that was in there out. Now I just want to stir this around. Isn't that looking good already? And it hasn't even started cooking. Once I have this stirred in, I'm then going to add my oregano, my basil, my thyme, my salt, and my brown sugar. And then I'm just going to stir that in. Now with that stirred in, we just want to cook this for a long time in the crock pot. It's going to help make it a nice, rich tomato sauce. Those tomatoes will break down. The seasonings will come to life. It's going to be so good. So I'm going to put the lid on and just turn this on. And I'm going to set the timer for 10 hours. I don't think it'll take that long. And I'm doing it on low. So now when I get home from work, that sauce will be all ready. It's just going to cook like that. All I'll have to do is get the spaghetti squash cooked, the garlic bread cooked, and we're ready to go. Hi, this is Nadine with Happy Eating Healthy. I'm going to show you how to cook a spaghetti squash so that you can use it as the noodles with spaghetti. That way you're not getting near as many calories and you're having a healthier meal because you're having more vegetables. The first thing I do is I'm just going to take my spaghetti squash and I'm going to pierce it with my cooking knife. And I really do want to try to go all the way down. And then from there, I'm just going to follow that line to cut it in half. I find this can actually almost be the hardest part of it. And I just keep going till I get it totally separated. Okay. Now this is what the inside looks like. All I want to do is get a big spoon and scrape out that inside, because we don't want the seeds. So I'm just scraping it out onto the breadboard at the moment, and then I'll dispose of it once I get it picked out. But it's easier to scrape it if I do that. So I'm just going like this and scraping it out like that. All I'm going to do now is take this baking pan, turn my squash upside down in the baking pan, and I want to add some water so that it somewhat steams the squash. And I want it to be about a ½ inch or so on the bottom. Now I'm ready to take this and I'm going to put it in the oven and I'm going to cook it at 375 degrees for about 40 minutes. Then I want it to cool before I start scraping out the spaghetti. So let me get this in the oven and we'll be back to show you how to do it after it's cooked and after it's cooled, how to scrape it out. The spaghetti sauce has been cooking now all day while I've been at work. So let's look at it and see how it looks. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention when I was putting it together, I put a bay leaf in after I had stirred it all together. So we'll be ready to take the bay leaf out before we stir it again. So here's our spaghetti sauce. I want to take this bay leaf out, and I'm just going to stir it. And then we have the whole spaghetti sauce ready to go. Look how rich and delicious that looks. That's all ready to go. It's just staying on warm until I get the spaghetti squash ready. So I've taken the spaghetti squash out of the oven. It's cooked. Now all I want to do is I want to turn this way. And then I'm going to take a spoon and scoop out the spaghetti squash. So I just want to start like this. And you notice as I'm going like this, I'm getting these strands that look like spaghetti. And I'm just going to put these strands in my bowl. And I'm just going to keep doing that till I have all of the squash out of the shell. I mean, look at how much like spaghetti that looks. And that's all there is to making your spaghetti squash.